This video of Brian Williams ending his show with a Lincoln Project video that compares Antifa with those who stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day was suggested by one of my local subscribers. So just a quick shout out that I've said this before, I do check out what people send me for story ideas, and Locals is a great place to do that. So if you haven't moved over there, check out the links in the description of the video. If you are watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this video on Locals, thank you for being there. All right. This video is, well, I'm sure there are going to be any number of reactions to it, and definitely leave me a comment about what you think. I am talking about this because once a year as a reporter in the Seattle area, I covered the May Day protests. May Day was typically when Antifa would be out later at night. Protests were typically peaceful during the day, but the sun would go down, and at night, the reason that my newsroom would staff most people on the May Day event, okay, is because the protests would essentially almost always turn into riots at night. And so almost all of us were assigned to cover it. I was an environmental reporter, and many times I was assigned to it, though sometimes I got to stay on the environment because my bosses wanted one or two extra stories in the newscast that didn't involve breaking windows or setting things on fire. This is the link that was shared with me, AmericanThinker.com, but I have seen this video on other sites, so I don't think it's been edited in any way. It was exactly in this version on another site that I saw. So it appears this is the way that Brian Williams ended his show, The 11th Hour. So I'm going to play it for you real fast, and then we will talk about it. This is about 40 seconds in or so. He has described what happened in Normandy on D-Day, and then this is what happens after that.
There was a time when we saved the world from tyranny and fascism. If it wasn't our finest hour, it's hard to say what was. And the folks at the Lincoln Project are out with a reminder to all.
Who is Antifa? They stormed the beaches of Normandy, parachuted into the French countryside, and gave their lives to face down and fight back against fascism. They took down Nazi machine gun nests, tore apart the Third Reich's strongholds, liberated concentration camps, liberated France, Italy, Belgium, Holland. Anywhere Antifa saw fascism, they fearlessly and relentlessly annihilated it. Fascism was defeated because of patriots like these, proud Americans who knew that the fight against fascists was not simply a battle between opposing nations. It was a war against inhumanity. A war that isn't nice, but cannot be lost. A war we still fight today. Anti-fascism, it's not a cable news talking point. It's an American ideal that should be memorialized because it was paid for in blood.
The Lincoln Project to take us off the air tonight. That is our broadcast for this Friday evening and for this week, with our thanks for being here with us. Have a good weekend unless you have other plans. On behalf of all our colleagues here at the networks of NBC News, good night.
Okay, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm not going to say a ton here because I know there'd be a gamut of different reactions to this. As you all know, I did a video last year about what it was like covering Antifa in the Seattle area because they often came out on May Day, as I said, at night. And I got to be honest, one of the things that cable newspapers say about Antifa is like they'll qualify him by saying, I remember reading a New York Times article that said, Antifa, a group that mobilizes to stop others it believes to be fascist, or like Antifa often, hits the streets to stop groups they consider to be fascist or racist. And actually, that was not a precursor to seeing Antifa out at all, in my experience. There were most of the times, if not all of the times, that, I was either physically present or watching my coworkers out in the streets covering, specifically like those riots at night on May Day. There were not neo-Nazi groups that Antifa was there trying to stop from taking over Seattle. That was just not happening. They were smashing store windows in retail areas. They were getting into clashes with police officers. They were attacking journalists. That's what I saw.
What they're really missing is we need to intersperse some good Antifa footage. Like, how about a bicycle lock smashing somebody's head in? Oh, that's a good one in Oregon. And maybe we could burn a couple federal buildings while we're at it. Maybe a couple
like chasing the mayor down.
We could intersperse it and talk about the heroism of
and beating up journalists who are trying to cover them.
Oh yeah, good. Andy knows.
So my big question is for both of you, when you watch that, do you get the feeling that they're talking about anti-fascism as an ideology, which I guess we would probably all say we are, or are they talking?
I think we can all agree that fascism is bad,
yes.
But I think that they are trying to conflate the idea of anti-fascism and the group Antifa as to being the same thing that is then represented by World War II soldiers storming the beach at Normandy, which I'm not following.
Well,
it's just because it almost is like they're setting it up so that you to like reclaim Antifa, so that if you try to criticize what has happened in, say, Portland, for instance, over the last year, then all of a sudden you just love fascism.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Conflate those two so that
it's absolutely a straw man.
No, it's a bullshit straw man argument, because they're saying it's a lot like anti-racism, by the way. And I'm sorry to bring that up, but it's a matter of saying, okay, are you anti-racist? That's like a philosophy or a group. Now, you could be against racism, but not be anti-racist. They're not mutually exclusive, but it's a trap. It's like if you say, what? No, I'm not a part of that group, or I'm not Antifa. Oh, so you're a fascist. No, I'm not a fascist. I don't like either of you.
I just feel like we're back to like the marketing problem with the Federalist, anti-Federalists. Like once the anti-Federalists had to pick anti-something, they kind of got on the losing end of a lot of the debates there. And it interests me that now they're trying to set up this debate that the ideology and the group are clearly one and the same. And clearly that is the group that saves democracy through brave, heroic measures, and war's not pretty, and everyone needs to stop being
here's
so sensitive about it.
It's like calling the Klan an anti-communist.
Hello, Robert Barnes.
That's the irony of all of this, because I would put money on it that if Brian Williams left his comfortable studio and went to cover that, if he went up to somebody who considers themselves Antifa, it would not go well. They're not going to be like, oh, thank you, yes, I would love to do an interview. No. It seems like oftentimes the way that things are defined is done in a way, and we kind of talked about this earlier in the live stream, to discourage conversation or dissenting viewpoints.
Sure.
Or even nuance. Even nuance. Because as somebody who has covered people who are Black Bloc Antifa rioters, I just never, I'm not saying that never in the history has this ever happened. I'm just saying in Seattle, when that would be, part of the May Day experience, if you will, if you want to come to Seattle on an interesting day, come on May Day, because the protests are usually pretty peaceful during the day, but then it just turns into all hell breaking loose at night. And, there wasn't a bunch of neo-Nazi groups out that were being confronted by Antifa. They were just there, smashing windows and setting things on fire and just generally pissed. But they weren't like, there wasn't like Seattle was this hotbed of white supremacy or something. Come on, they were surrounded by mostly like-minded people, but still setting the city on fire, Well,
I agree. And the problem where this all stems from is we spent some time together, earlier, Allison, we talked over and over because they're so far off the rails with this bullshit lie. It is beyond the pale that it's almost brilliant, because it's so far off the rails that you're kind of like, wait, they couldn't be that crazy. There must be something there, because why would they actually be that bold? It's like when somebody lies to your face and it's so transparent, so obvious, you almost are going, no, that can't be. That's just too obvious. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with my head, because how could they be just lying that much? And I think it makes you second guess yourself to, the degree where you're like, And then she also brought up that nobody else is covering this, other than, the post millennial, all the, right wing groups. And so she's like, am I stepping into a trap? Is this something, going on?
Well, because like here's the thing, as a journalist, I know how my industry frames stories. Okay. I know how, like, we pick something that's going to be the focus and we write a headline a certain way. And so it's like from the very second the reader sees something, we've already framed for you how to look at it. So I know the tactics. So I just want to make sure that, okay, I watched that video 10 times to make sure I understood exactly what, because listen, Eric, you can pull up the Twitter feed. I'll send it to you. But there are people responding to that on Twitter that are like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Sure. This is the best video the Lincoln Project has ever done. Like, yeah, screw the GOP. Like, these are Republicans who hate, what the GOP has become.
Did you look at, hold on.
It's just crazy though. How can people have such different takes on the same video? Like, that's when I start going, all right, what is going on here? Like, that people can watch the same thing and have just such divergent views of it.
They're not, because a lot of people have lost the ability or desire to critically think, because asking questions opens you up for public mockery, ridicule, and name calling. And so people are just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to question it. But when you understand, and that's one of the, law things, when you understand the way that people frame arguments, and you're coming at it from a journalistic standpoint, Allison, when you understand how arguments are framed, you can see the straw man being set up, that they're trying to frame a narrative where the ideology and the name of a group are now becoming inextricably linked. And so if you question the one, you're obviously questioning the other. And that is the trap. That's where you're setting up for the fall. Because if you say, wait, what are you all doing here? Then it's like, oh, you have a problem with our brave veterans? You're literally using a moment in history to try to push an ideology. It's bananas to me, but that's just me.
No, you're right. And it's actually very effective. And one thing I told Allison, you brought up the Twitter feed, a couple things. First off, those people responding, go look at their timeline. I bet you a good majority of them are not Republicans. They're not pro-conservative angles or whatever. The Lincoln Project, to me, is nothing more than Media Matters Part 2. David Brock. I told you to look up David Brock, and whose timeline did we look at? Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is no friend of the right wing or Republicans, but he's a pretty squared away journalist in general, and he does tell the truth. And he's the first one to say that Lincoln Project is Media Matters back then. This is so well done. And I think I need to step back and give it the respect. And that's part of why it makes me angry.
Being propaganda.
Oh, it's fantastic propaganda. Yeah. It's extremely well put together. It's a nifty little trap that, we're spending a lot of time talking about something. And again, this is bullshit. Right on the very face of it, it is absolute bullshit. But you're going to have people questioning it, because it's like, well, wait a minute, are you trashing the heroes? As Emily said, no, I'm actually honoring them, because I guarantee, let's go back in time and say, here's this guy with a bicycle lock and black bloc. That's who you are, right? When you were fighting the Germans and the Italians, that was you, right? They said you're Antifa. Oh yeah, let's talk to some veterans to see how they would enjoy.
Well, we have a classy mom who's a law nerd, and one of my mods in the chat who said, as the mom of a U.S. Marine serving those groups too, I'm offended by their use of our American military. And I think that unfortunately, what I see is if you say anything to stand up for our military on social media, you also get screamed at saying, hey, is this an appropriate use of our military or of a historical event to frame this issue? So,
and
what if they said, hey, we're just trying to give anti-fascism a better nuance
marketing campaign?
It's been taken hostage by.
We're trying to rebuild its image. We're cleaning it up.
It's been taken hostage by Trump, and and it shouldn't just all be relegated to the black bloc Antifa of the Pacific Northwest. And what if that's what they would say to you?
Then they should have said anti-fascism and continued on with the ideology.
Yeah,
then talk about the ideology.
So you think by
Americans who were anti-fascist, even.
So you think by saying who is Antifa that they're directly connecting it to what we've seen in Portland and Seattle?
Yes, that's how that's how I interpret it. That they're trying to blur the lines between reporting on a group called Antifa and an ideology, and then they're trying to conflagate the two of those and put it on. Look, but our World War II military is Antifa. It is this group. It is the same thing. Storming the beach on D-Day is the same as storming Portland. That's how I took it. That they're trying to draw that analogy that it is the same thing.
They did have a little tussle at the end. If you noticed in the last protest, there was like a couple people getting, and that's when I was like, okay, because they're not showing you the full on like chasing Ted Wheeler, out of the the area in Portland, but they did show you a little bit of a tussle in the street. So it's like, just to give you enough to be like, I think
they're trying to tie storming the beach to the protests that happened in the US. And I think they're trying to tie the two of those things to being both taking down fascism.
And Trump is Hitler.
In the way that they showed that there, absolutely.